So what do we love even more than being scared? Having a good old laugh while we're at it. Hey everyone, my name's Jim and welcome back to my movie obsession, a place for film obsessives, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my favourite horror comedies, because there does seem to be a great kind of meeting of horror and comedy out there that I really would like to know what your favourites are, because we love to sit there and be scared, but we also love to sit there and have a laugh afterwards. So let me know in the comments below your favourite horror comedies and let's get started. Of course I'm going to start off with The Lost Boys, which is probably the best horror comedy of all time in my opinion. Just a fantastic 80s movie, full of this 80s charm, full of 80s fun, and it of course has the two Corys, Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. It of course has Jameson Newlander, it of course has Jason Patric, Kiefer Sutherland, and there is this real kind of quirky comedic energy to the film, and this was a hallmark of the 80s, you know, there's just these over the top kind of strange, bizarre, quirky teenage horror movies, and there's just an element of humour in these films and in The Lost Boys specifically that just seems to be missing today. It's kind of a lightning in a bottle type of humour, and stars such as Corey Feldman and Corey Haim really tapped into that. When you watch the film it's not dated, but the comedy in it is so well timed, so well done, there's just something to it, a certain spirit that we just can't seem to capture today. There are some actually really scary moments in The Lost Boys, such as when Jason Patric first realises who these guys are, where they finally show him and just kill a bunch of people. It's really well edited, really dark, really just terrifying, you know, really great practical effects to show the vampires in all their glory. You know, they really go balls to the wall with it. They really go, right, this is a crazy vampire movie, we're not going to slow down just because it's a kind of a kids sort of movie. This is what I'm saying, this is like, teenage movies of today would never go this far. This is like a horror movie with children in. They don't pull any punches, it's just the comedy kind of becomes that levity, and Lost Boys is one of the perfect films for comedic levity. You know, where Jason Patric is first realising he's a vampire and he's floating outside of his brother's window, absolutely hilarious. Corey Haim with a wonderful performance where he can't come to terms, he's just really annoyed that his brother has become a vampire. It's absolutely hilarious.
You're a vampire, Michael. My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire. Oh, you wait till Mom finds out, buddy. Sammy, wait. Sam!
And you know, it really does tap into those childlike fantasies we have, The Lost Boys. At least for me as a kid, I used to spend time with my friends discussing what we'd do if there was like a vampire attack or a zombie attack. It has that kind of childhood innocence to it where you think that you would be a match for them, and you like the idea of going to battle with these, you know, lords of the undead, you know, such as the Frog Brothers in this. They really think that they've got it covered. They're really tough on the outside, but they're just kids, so they break down whenever the situation arises because it's all in their heads really. They never think it would really happen, and that's a great part of this movie. You know, the Frog Brothers are so funny, and all of the humour comes from the idea of vampires. Everything in this movie is based around vampires, so it's such a faithful movie to the vampire genre because nothing in it comes from somewhere else. They're not making jokes about 80s icons of the time, they're not making jokes about anything else other than vampires. All the humour seems to come from the idea of vampires. And, you know, Lost Boys is a wonderful horror film. It is scary in some moments, but it's really, really funny, and it's one of the most fun movies you can watch this Halloween. Next up I'm going to talk about Hocus Pocus. Yes, I do regard it as a horror film because it's a supernatural comedy film, and you know what, there's actually some pretty scary moments in the movie. This is one of the most edgy Disney movies ever made in my opinion. You know, it has some moments in it that are really rough. You would not have this today. You know, the Sanderson sisters, the witches in this, are just crazy bitches. They are just fucking shit up. They don't care. Like, they would kill a child like that. They just don't have any morals. And you know, they're not watered down. They're funny. You know, they are. But they're really morbidly funny. The jokes they make are about killing children. You know, this is just Disney at its most edgy it's ever been. There's some scary moments in this, and it has this dark tone. It has this creepiness to it, and I'm really surprised this came out of Disney. I really, really am. You know, I really found the zombie scary in this as a kid. The zombie is a scary bastard. Even today, this fucker scares me. And even though it's not a conventional horror film, it is still a kids film. It's still a great Halloween film to watch. Come on. Everyone's going to be watching Hocus Pocus this October. Don't tell me you're not. One thing I always found funny about this movie, and I just laugh at it now, I just laugh at it because I used to have a real problem with it, but like the whole, every single character in this film tells this 13-year-old boy he shouldn't be a virgin. Every character, teenager, adult, anything. You should not be a virgin, mate. You are 13. Disney are telling this. They're throwing this out there. Don't be a virgin, kids. Just break the law. Even though you're 13, you shouldn't be a virgin. Just you go and lose your virginity immediately, kids. How did this get through Disney? I'm blown away. This is one of the reasons why I still talk about Hocus Pocus. I'm baffled that this movie got greenlit. And it not even the fact that they just used this joke, it's used all the way. It's the main plot point of the movie. What the fuck? Of course, we have one of the creepiest moments in the film is where Sarah Jessica Parker sings "Come Little Children."
Little children, I'll take thee away into a land of enchantment. Come, little children, the time's come to play here in my garden of magic.
What a terrifying song. "Come little children, I'll take thee away." Like that's really dark, you know, when you think of the world we live in today where children have become more at risk. Back here when we were kind of relaxed on it and lots of things are yet to come out, this is a creepy song in hindsight. And it's a creepy song back here as well, you know, because it's so charming the way it's sung, and you know, it just gets under your skin, but there's this pleasant nature to it where you can imagine kids falling for it, which they do in the film. Next up, I'm going to talk about Shaun of the Dead, one of the funniest horror movies ever made. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, of course, one of their part of the Cornetto trilogy, and the most horrifying of the Cornetto trilogy. You know, it comes with a great love of zombie movies, of horror comedies, I think. You know, I think there's definitely kind of an element of Lost Boys in this, because it's people out of their depth coming to terms with this amazing, incredible, dangerous threat. And this one, it's grown irresponsible men. And it's just fantastic, Shaun of the Dead. You know, it's basically a sitcom, but you throw zombies in. And it's a genius idea when you think about it. I think one of the things that appeals to me about Shaun of the Dead is the everyman approach of the main star, which is of course Simon Pegg as Shaun. You know, there's nothing special about this guy. He's a little bit of a screw up, but you root for him because he's likeable and you want to see him do well, and you always have to have a likeable character at the heart of every horror movie, and Shaun is a very likeable character. Even though he's a bit of an idiot, he's funny, he's well-meaning, he's got a good heart. And it's interesting to see this guy with no previous training in looking after anyone actually have to step up to the plate and take on this crazy threat because he's not competent in doing it. There's no one competent in this film, and the fact that no one's competent, it makes you root for them more because you just want to see them actually achieve something against this incredible threat. You know, they don't pull any punches with the zombies. The zombies look great, the makeup effects are great, you know, and it does get pretty intense near the end when they're all breaking into the pub. I would regard it more as a comedy than a horror, but you know, there are some memorable zombie moments in it, and the zombies don't give a fuck. The zombies are dangerous in this, the zombies are creepy, and it's just interesting putting them into this comedic world because the zombies don't care, you know, and you find that at the end. The zombies are as they are in every zombie film, but they've just been put into this crazy situation. And it's just one of those great popcorn kind of horror comedies. You can sit there and it's entertaining from start to finish, Shaun of the Dead, you know, and I think it's the best of the Simon Pegg and Nick Frost trilogy. It's a great movie to watch in October because you don't always want to watch terrifying, absolutely nail-biting, horrifying horrors all October, do you? You want to watch some Hocus Pocus, you want to watch some Shaun of the Dead, you want to have that levity, and this is a great example of that. Next one I'm going to talk about is An American Werewolf in London, which is a really, really funny horror film, but definitely scary, really, really scary as well. So obviously it's about this guy gets bitten by a werewolf while his friend gets killed by one, and his friend is kind of roaming the earth as the undead, warning him that he's going to change into a werewolf. Now this is just a really funny film because the morbid comedy comes from this character played by David Norton encountering his former best friend played by Griffin Dunne, who is now a corpse, and he's just warning him time and time again that he's going to turn into a werewolf. And it's just really morbidly funny to see this guy who is now just all, his skin's hanging off, his tendons are hanging off, like it's incredible makeup work by Rick Baker, but it's just hilarious. It's like really morbidly funny to see him going around just talking and his body disintegrating slowly but surely, and them having this kind of ridiculous conversation. And that's where humour can come from in horror, the horrific situations, the absurdity of the situation, and that's what An American Werewolf in London really latches onto, the absurdity of the situation. They know it's kind of a ridiculous, looked at as a ridiculous premise in the real world. So, you know, such moments as when David realises he is going to become a werewolf and he's running up to a policeman, swearing and shouting and trying to get him to arrest him because he knows he's going to kill. It just captures that kind of real world reaction we would have to a situation like this. We would just think it's ridiculous and wouldn't take it seriously and just wouldn't believe the guy. And it's just about the desperation of, if it was real, you would have to act like a complete mental case in order to be arrested, because no one's going to believe you on it. One of the most hilarious moments in this film is when he goes into, there's loads of explicit stuff in this. This film would not get past today. There's a really explicit sex scene, and there's this scene where he goes into a porn theatre, and his dead friend who's stalking him is sitting there watching porn. And it's like they're having this conversation about David turning into a werewolf while you hear these porn noises in the background. It's just absolute absurd, truly off the wall. And you know, then you see David's victims, because by this point David has killed people, and his mate's saying to him, "You've got to commit suicide." And you see his victims sitting in the porn theatre as well. Just the fact they're watching porn whilst talking about this guy being a werewolf. You can't make that shit up. You can't come up with something more crazy and absurd than that. And that's what I love about this movie. It's quirky, it's off the wall, it's just ridiculous. But it is a very good horror film as well, you know. It's not just a stupid comedy. There's lots of really dark moments in this. Fantastic makeup effects and practical effects by Rick Baker. Stunning stuff, you know, where he creates the werewolf, and also the werewolf transformation sequence is one of the most famous scenes now in horror history, to be honest. You know, and when he is a werewolf, you can imagine this thing, you can imagine encountering it, and you really do think to yourself, if they sat there and made this today, it would just be CGI and it wouldn't draw you in. This animatronic of this werewolf draws you in. It's shown sparingly, but it's terrifying and it looks real. And good old Michael Jackson actually hired Rick Baker to do the practical effects for his film Thriller. After seeing this, he was that impressed, and Rick Baker was just a pioneer for special effects, and American Werewolf in London is a brilliant example of that. So the last one I'm going to talk about is Betlejuice, of course, the ghost with the most, played by Michael Keaton, and his character's kind of a cross between Ace Ventura and Freddy Krueger. You know, he's an absolute Fruit Loop. And the jokes that he's cracking are, you know, he's this wild man character and he's crazy and he's funny, but the jokes he's cracking are like morbid, they're twisted, they're sick, they're depressing. And that's what this film is. It has this kind of comedic style, but it's all morbid, it's all depressing, it's all making fun of dark things, you know, and it's a real twisted film. It really is. It's Tim Burton back in his element. You know, this is when Tim Burton really did things a different way to how he does now. He used to have this real way with irony and this way with humour. He'd make these dark, scary films, but he'd have just the characters in there so quirky and so self-deprecating, and everything felt like a big kind of joke and parody of horror, but at the same time it wasn't, because it was a horror film. Tim Burton used to have this really interesting way about him, and Beetlejuice is a great example of that. Now, of course, the sets in this, the practical effects, the direction by Tim Burton just creates this brilliant, playful, mischievous but dark world. So many images in this ingrained in your mind, like, you know, the bit where Beetlejuice turns into a snake, which is quite scary. I did get scared. I did pee myself when I was a little kid watching that, I admit it. And then when they try to do a seance at the end and raise these two ghosts, that's creepy. The music all cut, and the look of the scene, the lighting, the the kind of camera angles, and the idea of what they're doing. But then it still felt comedic as well. You're watching something horrific, but it's still a bit comedic. Parts of their body fall off. Even when he's terrifying you, Burton, he brings it back to comedy. It's a wonderful mix of horror and comedy, Beetlejuice. It's masterfully done. Beetlejuice is evil, but he's playful, he's comedic, he doesn't realise the scope of what he's doing, I suppose, and that's a wonderful thing about Beetlejuice. Horror isn't necessarily meant to terrify you always. Horror is sometimes just meant to be fun like everything else is. And that's what this film is. There's just so much to Beetlejuice that I really appreciate, and it's one of the best supernatural comedies ever. So please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. If you're obsessed with movies, this channel is the place for you. And thanks for watching again, and I'm going to be doing some more horror related content for the rest of October. Turn on notifications to be informed of new videos. So yeah, once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.